I'm Tara Bradner, and this is Hopeful Hints, an infertility podcast where you will receive quick, hopeful hints to guide you through infertility. Here, you will find education, inspiration, and most importantly, find peace as you walk through this journey to fulfill your family vision. Welcome to Hopeful Hints. I'm your host, Tara Bradner, and I'm so excited for today's guest. She is not only a specialist I've worked with sleep consulting, but a dear friend, Annie Schlecht. She has her own sleep consulting business, but today I have her on to get very intimate with you guys in regards to miscarriage. Annie is freshly moving through the stages of grief, and I think it's important that we highlight the invisible loss of miscarriage and what grief looks like, because there's many that may be listening to this that have had miscarriages in the past or recently, but may experience miscarriages in the future. So Annie started her miscarriage on September 17th, and baby passed on the 20th of September. She went through this all at home, and her story is just, it's heartbreaking and beautiful at the same time. So, Annie, welcome, and share just a little bit about your story. Let's just dive right into your story.
Hi, Tara. Thanks for having me, first of all. I'm really excited to kind of talk about my story and process through with you and your audience and hopefully help somebody along the way. So a little bit about myself. So I am a mom of two little girls, Ruby and Pippa, who are 6 and 7. And my husband is in agriculture sales, seed and chemical sales. We live in Wimbledon, North Dakota, just a tiny little town, about 200 people, just northeast of Jamestown. So like you said, I have my own business. I'm a sleep consultant with Zen Sleep Consulting and an occupational therapist, and have been doing that job for about 6 years here, and, do everything pretty much virtual, work from home, able to be home with my family. So my husband and I kind of have been sweethearts since, high school. Like, we've dated on and off since high school. And, anybody that's old enough to know about Sex and the City, I always refer to him as my Mr. Big. Like, just our love story is just cute. So we've just grown our little family and, have two beautiful girls. We actually went after we got married, we got pregnant pretty quickly and miscarried our very first one. And that one was a pretty early miscarriage. So it was more like a chemical pregnancy, I think is what they refer to it as. So
Unfortunately, the term they use is
yeah,
that.
I don't, and it was heartbreaking, especially for it being our first one. And so we went through that. However, I didn't have to go through anything physical with that one. So I feel like I just went through it really quick, and life was going on, life was happening. So I didn't really ever process through that one very much. But like, we still honor that baby. We still talk about that miscarriage. Like, we've talked about miscarriage with my little girls and stuff. So they understand about the process. So we kind of were rolling along thinking our family was great at 2. But my husband has always kind of wanted a little boy, of course, and just a third in general, because I always told him, like, you don't get to decide, honey. Like, you realize that. He's like, I know. But he's like, we have 2 amazing girls. He's like, I just feel a little incomplete. Like, I think a third is in the mix. And I was kind of like, oh, I don't know. I don't know. I feel pretty good about our family of 2. But within the last year, I just was like so sick and tired of having birth control. Like, I had an IUD and I had it removed like on a whim. I just like intuitively was like, I need to get this out of my body. But anyway, we got pregnant and we were like, oh my gosh, okay, let's go with this. And we got so excited. And we told our girls, because I'm one of those people, like, I cannot keep it secret. I'm so excited. There's this tiny little life growing inside of you, and every decision about your day is, impacted by this little creature. So we told our kids early on, but we also told them early on, some babies are ready to come to the world and some aren't. So we very much prepared them. And I don't know, part of me is like, oh, you go back and forth with, gosh, was I dumb for announcing it to the world and announcing it to my kids? And I'm like, no, like, this is a process that I'm so excited that I got to teach them about. They got to get excited about baby every day before my 7-year-old would get on the bus. She'd be like, bye, mommy, bye, baby Emerald. And she'd like pat my tummy. And I'm like, where's baby Emerald coming from? So we just rolled with it. And then, yeah, and then our story just kind of started the day that I started to have some cramps and some bleeding.
Was everything going well? Like, did you know anything could be concerning, or were you being watched more closely or anything like that?
Tell you the truth, I hadn't even had my first appointment. I was due to go in that next week, for my first appointment after actually, it was like the Wednesday after I miscarried that I was supposed to go in for my first appointment. And right away, though, everything like, the typical, like my boobs were hurting. I was a lot more tired. And then, things were great after that. I was like, yeah, I feel wonderful. Not like my first two pregnancies. I felt like I was much more sick, but, I could tell like my boobs are getting bigger. So I definitely knew I was pregnant. So I'm like, this can't be real. Like, I can't be having this easy of a pregnancy.
How many weeks were you when your miscarriage began?
I was 9 weeks. And I, I just remember coming home I was at the dentist and came home and it just felt weird. And I was like, well, is it the lunch I ate? Like just something in my stomach is feeling weird. So I laid down and so kind of, heads up, I'm a Reiki practitioner too. So I'm very much into the whole energy cleansing thing. And I was like, I don't know, I just feel like I need to clear my chakras. And I did an energy cleansing and I cleared my sacral chakra and kind of my, the mantra I use is, clear any energies that are no longer serving my highest good. Did that on my chakras and took a nap. And when I woke up, I started to bleed. And I think that that's just such a, like I cleared this energy that wasn't meant to be there. And, like it's kind of like, holy crap. Like, yeah, I know, energy work is just so powerful and everything, but just like that happened and my body just knew something wasn't right. And I started to spot and bleed. And it wasn't more than just spotting, So of course, I'm, like, calling my friends who have gone through this and, I'm like, "What's going on? Like, have you" it's been a long time since I was pregnant, so I have forgotten a lot. So, immediately called my doc or, emailed my doc, and I was like, "Hey, like, not trying to freak out, just trying to stay very, zen about this, but what do you think?" She's like, "Let's get you in for an ultrasound tomorrow," because this was on a Thursday. So, Friday, she's like, "Get in for the ultrasound." We went in. Such a weird experience, like wouldn't let me see the screen. He's like, Are you sure you're, on point with your dates because you're measuring it like 5 weeks, 5 days?" I'm like, "No, I'm clockwork. I know my schedule. It is I know my schedule. Like, there's no discrepancies in my dates here." And so, we got the call then from the doc and she's like, "No heartbeat. You're measuring small." Like, "Yep, you're miscarrying." So granted, it's a Friday, so she's like, "Go home and basically expect to have some cramping and some heavy bleeding."
What happened from there?
So Friday night was okay. I was cramping, still bleeding. Saturday came along though. I was trying to just, I was kind of in shock still and just sad. We hadn't told our kids yet because they were kind of at birthday parties and things, so we hadn't told them. And then finally Saturday afternoon, we told them and let them know, had the conversation with them. And then Saturday night, I was trying to like just be like, okay, our friends had like a party. So I tried to go and I started cramping there and I was like, I gotta go. Like, and I went home and I literally labored from like 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. And it was legit labor. Like it was pain so bad. I was crying. It was intense. It wasn't just cramping like a menstrual cycle. Like it was very intense. I didn't know what to do. My husband didn't know what to do. I was just, because every single pain is just like that reminder of what you're going through. Um, and so it just made it that much more difficult. So I was in the bath, like legit, like how I would assume a home birth was, and went through it till about 2 a.m. My husband was like, "Here's a heating pad." He tried to do all the things. He had no idea though, and I didn't know, so I didn't know what to tell him I needed. I was just, it's kind of like I think when anyone is laboring, like hold my damn hand, don't watch football games, like
Right.
you're with me. Um, but it was just tough because I had no idea. I was just expecting some or some bleeding and some cramping, And I wish I would have known because, he started like getting me some bubble bath and some candles and like all these things because I'm like, no, I'm gonna feel every ounce of this pain. Because he's like, what do you want? Do you want some Tylenol? Do you want this? And I'm like, no, like I want to feel every ounce of this experience to honor this baby and to go through this. I just felt I needed to do that. So Sunday came. I felt a lot better when I woke up. We went and he was like, let's just get outside. Let's get you moving. Let's just go do something outside. So we went and decided to go mow and did that for a couple hours. Got done with that, went and had some dinner at my mom's. She's like, just let me feed you, So I went to see my mom. And as soon as I got there, I started laboring again. And this time it was like the back, like I had like bad back pain, and it was so bad. Like I was like squatting down, like, like you would see a woman in a hospital trying to birth a baby. And it was tough. She did a fundal massage on my stomach, which helped tremendously. She's big into oils, so she kind of put some oils on my stomach. She fed me some food I tried to eat. Um, and it was just kind of this on and off, like, holy smokes, like 4 hours, 5 hours of pain that first night, and then 3 hours of it at the second. The next day I woke up, felt okay, thought that everything was good. And legit, the story is like I was clotting, like, and had a lot of blood coming out, like, in the toilet. And I had a friend who legit had this conversation with me. She's like, I was scooping things out of the toilet because I wanted to bury this baby. So she's like, I put it in a jar and then I went and buried it. And so I was doing this because I was like, thank God. Like, she told me, I never would have known, but it did. It meant a lot to me. So I'm like scooping all these clots out of the toilet, and we went and buried this jar out at, like a really special spot for our family. We came back and it was cold and rainy that day. And I was like, I need to take a bath. Like, I'm just so cold. So I got in the bathtub, and then legit, like, as soon as I was easing into the tub, that's when I passed actual baby. Like, it just came out, and it wasn't painful. And I caught it and I just held it, and I just knew, like, this little tiny clump was my baby. And I'm just like shaking, and I call my husband immediately. He comes home and he sees it. He's just like, eyes big in shock. And I'm like, I'm like, I need another jar, and like, we need to go do this again because this is it. And I wish, and it was about a little tiny glob, like, it didn't look like a baby, but you could tell it was definitely the sack. And, definitely, like, it was about half a size of a Q-tip maybe in length. Um, but being able to, like, hold it and to have it at home in that way, like, I'd always wanted to have a home birth, and so I feel like this baby gave me that process, and it was so painful and awful, but beautiful at the same time, because, like, I got to go through this for a couple days, of course, and with, different supports, like my husband and my mom, and she helped a little bit. Like, just going through this at home was so beautiful to me. It's
So
just the experience I can't even like, nobody wants to go through that, but it was exactly what I think I needed.
I am just full of goosebumps. I think there's a few key things here. So, number one, it sounds like you had support. Your doctor seemed supportive. You had family support. You had spousal support from the beginning of your pregnancy to miscarriage and into the grieving process and burial. And I just think that that is so important to highlight because it doesn't happen for a lot of people. And so just making sure that your healthcare team does consist also of individuals who support and realize your pregnancy is different and your pregnancy going forward after miscarriage should be handled delicate and you should get in sooner and they should respond to your messages sooner and those kinds of things too because of this last you experience. But also that you can have this process occur at home. You can miscarry at home and surround yourself with a process like you did and going through the symptoms and creating a ceremony. Can you share a little bit more? I love the picture that you posted. It just resonated with me of you bearing baby because that's what this was. So let's just call it what it is. This was a private family funeral, a ceremony, a time of grieving that you've created. And I just think it's so powerful and beautiful. So can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So my husband and I recently bought some land, and we plan to build out there hopefully within the next 3 to 5 years, let's say. But anyway, we had some family photos scheduled out there, and we found out we were pregnant like a couple days before this was going to happen. And I'm like, well, this is kind of a perfect time. We could announce to the girls and capture their reactions. So we told the girls about baby out at this place, and we call it Friendly Acres Farms. It's so cute. Like, there's legit a sign that the old farmer had on his barn that says Friendly Acres Farms. So just those vibes in general are just amazing. So that's where he was introduced to our family, and we wanted him to be buried there too. And I say him because it just felt like a little guy. But there were these three beautiful trees that were all standing kind of clumped together, and it just felt like such a protective little nook for us to bury. And it was like when I was mowing the day that I was still going through, like, I went through those trees, and I'm just like, this is where he needs to be. So my husband and I, it was just us. We just went out there. We dug a hole, it was in a jar. I wrapped it up and just gave it some kisses and put him there and kind of said some prayers and some intentions and put some rocks around it. And we'll fancy it up a little bit as we go along. Like it's so beautiful, the sunsets, and it just looks over the spot. But yeah, I think that being able to have that experience is amazing. Like I had a friend who came over to visit and she was just going to drop off a treat and run away. But I was like, hey, how's it going? And, she came and she just sat and talked with me and she had miscarried too. She's like, I wish I would have talked to someone about this and heard this story. Cause she's like, I remember passing baby in the toilet and I flushed it really quick because I was scared and I didn't know what to do. And I just thought the faster I got rid of it, the faster it would go away. And I was just like, yeah, like that's why I want to share my story. Like, it's okay if you dig it out of the toilet. It's okay if you have to wrap it up in a tissue and take baby home with you, whatever feels right to you. Or if flushing it's okay for you, that's fine too. But just know that whatever you do, you're not crazy. You're not abnormal. Like you have to deal with the grief in a way that feels good for you.
This is a good spot too to say you can tell people whenever you want. There is no right or wrong way to go about when do I share this pregnancy? Do I do it the moment I get the two pink lines? Do I have to wait till after the first trimester? You get to pick. That is the beauty of this journey is you get to pick. And should you experience a miscarriage, there is support that's out there for you during that time too. If you did share, or if you share afterwards or a month later, to just know that it's okay when you decide in your time, that is the best time. Now, Annie, you have some key takeaways that you implemented following your miscarriage. Can you share those with us that you feel has perhaps helped you move through this loss and time?
Yeah. One of my big takeaways is you just said it, like tell people when you're ready and don't let anyone be like, oh, well, that's why you should wait till 12 weeks. Don't let anyone ever tell you that. Every baby, I don't care how old they are, if you've been, just one day of conception or 9 weeks or 4 months or a full term birth, that baby's life gets to be celebrated and it deserves to be celebrated. And as a mom and as a dad, like you deserve to have the support. You deserve to get excited. And you also deserve to have support if you do go through something like this. It's common, but we all need to go through this having support. So I'm so happy that I did tell, and like we told people we were excited and we let ourselves get excited. It was beautiful. It was like having 2 months almost of having this little bundle in our family. And I told people and they did reach out. Like I had a lot of support. I had some friends that would bring over some meals. And I finally, I'm one of those people that I'm like, oh, I don't want to put anybody out. So I was like, yes, I would love a meal. Thank you. I hate to cook in the first place, but yes, if you could bring me a meal, that'd be amazing. So I have a couple friends, like shout out to my friend Beth and my friend Lisa for bringing over some meals and friends for just bringing over treats. My neighbor brought flowers and, cards and just an outpouring of love. I felt so surrounded. I didn't do all the things I needed to do to take care of myself physically. And we know that when we are sleep deprived, right? I'm going to go there because that's my realm. But when we're sleep deprived, everything else is so impacted, our mental health. And so me not getting that exercise, me not getting that sunshine, me not getting social, like any social experiences, like was really impacting my sleep. And so I think people definitely need to grieve, but we also have to remember we're going to feel better if we can just do these simple things. It's kind of like getting up and walking after a surgery. You're going to feel so much better. It sucks and damn it, it's painful, but get up and do it because you'll feel so much better. And I just wish that I would have had somebody come be like, okay, we're going to go for a walk and you don't have to talk to me. We're going to go for a walk or you want to go by yourself. Cool. I'll watch your kids. Like those kind of things can be a way that you could to help support someone and just reaching out and asking for help and asking for support and hearing other people's stories has helped me so much too.
I think we need to remember a loss is a loss. I don't care if it, like you said, one day of conception within the first week of that positive pregnancy test. I think there's just such it's an invisible loss, right? There's no casket, there's no body, there's no earthly time to get to know this baby, to be visual life, but it is a loss. And with loss comes mourning and grieving. And I think that's kind of a place too where women also find themselves going through this differently than their partner does too. Like they didn't pass the baby, they weren't pregnant, they didn't feel the symptoms, they didn't, all the things. And men are fixers and they're like, okay, what do I need to do to fix this and remove this? And sometimes it's just give me a hug, right? Like, so can you share a little bit more about, you had briefly touched on it, but that how your husband assisted through this? He's the one closest, or your partner, if you're listening. How can they help? How did you find ways that your husband could step in and help you?
Right. Well, thinking back on it now, because again, like I said, he didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. But I think like run a bath, get a bubble bath going, get some candles lit, get some relaxing music, and then just really focus on like being there. If they want a physical touch on their back or if they want to not be touched, but just have you in the room with nothing else to do but to be there and send love. Like you are just engulfing this person with love while they're going through it. But just the presence. And I know it's hard to sit there and watch anyone in pain or going through this, but like we got to be there and to really be present with them. Because sometimes it's hard too to be like, well, what do you need? What do you need? Just assume they need this. You need a glass of water. I brought you one. I'm going to put it on this counter, you know, or hey, I'm going to have my mom come take the girls after school today. So you don't have to make any decisions because you're in grief mode. You don't want to go have any of that logical thinking. So if somebody can step out of that, and can remove themselves from that for a second and be like, I'm going to make these decisions for you. So that takes one thing off of your plate. Cause I feel like a lot of us, like when you're going through a miscarriage and you have a job and you have a family or you have, anything going on, like you want to just like move through it and you're not allowing yourself to grieve, but really just take your time and allow yourself. Take the day off of work if you have to. Like this is a major loss and you need to process it. Otherwise, it's going to manifest down the road if we don't deal with it now. I talked to a doula, and I guess that having like miscarriage doulas is a thing. I guess I didn't know that. And I don't know if a lot of them offer it, but even just as like a woman to come over and, because sometimes to just surround yourself with other women too who can be like, okay, this is what she needs, and to step in and be like that person. I wish, because literally I was birthing at home. And it would have been really cool to have a friend come be like, okay, I'm on my way. We're going to do this. Like I'm here. This is how I can help you. Here, I'm going to bring over some heating pads, like those cramp heating pads that you see, like those menstrual cycle ones. Those got me through forever too. Like having a little care package of something like that. And like knowing if there's a doula in your area, asking if they do miscarriage services, because we don't want to prepare for this. But at the same time, you need to know what resources are in place for you.
100%. I also want to encourage people to take time off of work. I, being the person I am, if you know me personally, I'm very advocacy focused. So, like, it was natural for me to go to my employer and be like, we need to add miscarriage and failed embryo transfer to our grievance package and allow for paid time off because I'm at home having a miscarriage and that is worse than a cough and cold. So, I'm sorry I'm not coming in to work and I should get compensated, right? So, there's this whole other side, and I know there's some work being done at the federal level. There's other countries that have acknowledged miscarriage and the failed embryo transfers and all of that to be considered. But even if you don't have that, I want to give you permission and space to do it. Just do it. Just take it off, call in sick, get a note if they require that. Any medical provider will be willing to provide you with that should you need it. But please take time to experience this loss. Like Annie has shared with us, there's actual physical pain, there's actual physical symptoms that you are experiencing. This is not just a period. This is not just a chemical loss happening. Your cervix is actually dilating and passing a baby through there. Like if you physically break this down, if we were to physically examine you during a miscarriage, your cervix is open, you are contracting, it is open. So I think if we step back and look at it from that view, I hope you can find space in you to justify, if that's the right term, the time off away from work, away from events, away from people. Like you said, you tried to go to an event and you left. And it's okay. Like you can just go for a little bit. You can say no to things all in your time, all at your pace, but to just step back and acknowledge this for what it is.
Yes, absolutely.
So it is now 1 month almost to the date since your loss. So can you share a little bit about where your body's at and where you're at mentally? Is there still support around you? What does that look like?
Yeah. Okay. So obviously, my doc was wonderful throughout the process, right? Like the day I miscarried, she's like, here's my number. Like, if you need anything, I'm on call all weekend. Text me, call me. Wonderful. She did great. However, I was supposed to have my first appointment that next Wednesday. So I was like, well, I'm like, do we need to come in? And she's like, you let me know what your body thinks. Like, kind of reach in and just let me know what you think. And I'm like, I don't know that I need to. So she's like, let's just hold off then. We'll check your HCG levels in a couple weeks. And so I went to the clinic. It was last week, actually. I went to the clinic. And first, I've been putting off having them check because the first time you go to the clinic, you're supposed to be going for your first appointment, right? So first I went to my eye doctor and it's like literally right next door. I was crying and I was like, text you. I remember texting you that morning. I'm like, Tara, do I really have to go get my HCG levels checked? Like, I don't know. I don't know. Do I have to do this? Like, what's the point? Am I just paying lab fees? And you kind of walk me through why that's important. And maybe you want to share a little about the science behind why it's important to have more medical follow-up.
Yeah. So I'll just quickly insert that I have seen far too many women sitting at the 6, 8 week mark with elevated HCG levels. And what that typically is retained tissue. And there's a certain point, I don't know, I hate even seeing 8 weeks, but we'll go with 8 weeks, that you need to consider other medical interventions because there's just some other risk factors that go along with that. So it is important to track HCG levels following a miscarriage.
Yeah. Okay. And so after hearing you say that, I was like, okay, I'm waiting at the doctor's office. I'm like waiting. My eye doctor comes in and I start bawling. Like she's so sweet and I'm pretty close with her as well. And she's like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Like, can I just give you a hug? Cause she knows, like, cause she follows me on Instagram and stuff. And she's like, I'm so sorry to hear about the loss. And I was like, yeah. And I'm like, I have to go next door and have my HCG levels checked next. And she's like, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. So that part in and of itself, like I sat down in the lap chair. They're like, "Oh, Annie, you called in," and like I go in, the lady's all cheery, and I sit down, I put my arm out, and I just start bawling. And that poor lab tech was probably like, "Whoa, whoa, are you really scared of needles, or what's going on?" And she's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, like this is not the lab work I was hoping to have done." And that's all I said. And like, granted, she had no idea what to do. I'm like, can I have a tissue, please? Like, like, so just making sure that no matter where you work in the medical field, that you have a little training on emotional intelligence and empathy because you never know what people are going through. And so I had my labs checked, levels were high. So that in and of itself was another I was like, okay, I'm doing really good. A couple weeks post, I feeling okay. Nope. I sat down in that chair in that clinic first time. It was terrible. Even if you'd have to take your kid to the doctor and just walking into the clinic when you're like I was supposed to be coming in for some prenatal visits and I didn't get to do that. Like that's a grieving process. And so anyway, my doc's like, okay, they're a little elevated. We're going to check you in another 2 weeks. So that's kind of where my body's at right now. However, this last week here, I just started bleeding again. I don't know if it's my first cycle. I would assume so. And that took me right back. And so, the cramping and just of a menstrual cycle took me right back to that pain. And so to make sure that you're still allowing yourself and you're knowing that, yep, this is going to be waves and it's going to be a roller coaster where some days you're going to be great. Some days it's going to be really hard. Things are going to trigger you. And so if you are someone that knows somebody that's going through this, maybe check back with them. Be like, how are things? Just letting you know I'm thinking of you kind of deal. Because yeah, every step along the way, I think it's getting easier and easier. But now after going through this and like having that first bleeding experience again, it was tough.
That those feelings
Where?
can surface again at any time, any trigger, but that bleed especially.
Yes. Yes.
Well, Annie, thank you so much for getting vulnerable and sharing with the community. I know that you are someone who's extremely open to connect with others who have been through miscarriage or are currently going through it. So, where can people find you to connect on that level?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, if you want to come over at Zen Sleep Consulting, like that's where I'm at on Instagram. That's my handle. Just DM me there and we can get in touch. And again, like I'm here to talk to people. If my grieving process and my story can help one person know, like, oh, yeah, like I remember Annie saying this, I'm just going to have these things on hand or just know about it. We just need to be aware of that and we need to check in on people. So thank you so much for letting me be vulnerable here.
Yeah.
Thanks for handling some of the tears.
But thank you again, Annie. And thank you for joining us and sharing on this topic of miscarriage, which is not talked about enough. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We will see you back here next week, Tuesday.